A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend, Constitutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Leonard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Politics Podcast. Joining me today will be Scott Holman. And before we bring him on, I just wanted to say, normally the extended show notes can be found at Buzzsprout, where the show is primarily housed, even though it's on 20 plus audio platforms, 5 video behind the scenes platforms. But I say that because if you go to Buzzsprout and look at the transcript, there you will find the extended show notes with related links and bonus material. And I'm pre-saying that today's bonus, normally I don't decide what the bonus material is until I'm rushing at the last minute to put the show up. But today I've already pre-decided I'm going to have the Liberty Beacon piece, music, TV, movies. It will be known why in a minute that makes sense. So at any rate, welcome to the show, Scott Holman. How are you?
Thanks so much. I'm good, Joseph. I really appreciate the invite. I'm excited to talk about filmmaking and art and I guess some religious stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
See where you take the interview.
Yeah, we'll get to the more serious stuff at the end. I want to start lighthearted. And the first obvious question, though, is like, cue the who. Who are you? Who, right? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where are you now? That kind of bio background stuff.
Yeah, I was born and raised in northern Wisconsin in the Northwoods there. It's kind of like a Canadian lifestyle, boreal forest, wild place with beyond the farms of the middle America. And what was the rest? When, where, who, how? My grandparents moved there after World War II. My grandma was born there and raised there before that. And she, actually, my grandparents one just passed, and the other one's 98 right now. So World War II vets. So that's been interesting. Like their whole life's been interesting. I feel like our family's very like disconnected and like lived in different states every generation, except for like we have some connection to Wisconsin still. As far as like my creative world, I played a lot of music back in the 90s and had a filmmaking program that was really cool in our high school. And that eventually led me to continue on in the process of storytelling. I've got a couple of films out now about music and basically music and connection and processing trauma through music, which we'll get into.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm in New Zealand now.
Oh, you're in. Oh, okay.
I'm in New Zealand now, but this is I've been to like 40 some countries traveling, but this is like my 6th country I've lived in, my 8th year living abroad from the States.
Interesting. So, the next thing I wanted to get into was hence why the transcript bonus will be music, TV, and movies piece. You had a band. You had a couple records. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah, so back in the 90s, if anyone remembers, a lot of live music, and it was kind of like there's raves, but it was live music was still like the big thing. And I was really hooked on like Nirvana and Weezer and those like grunge bands and alternative music bands. And so were a lot of my friends. So we had our neighbor passed and our parents bought the next property in the countryside in like the forest. So we had this whole house that became like a music studio for us when we were teenagers. And like everyone in the town that we were kind of friends with, skateboarding, snowboarding, music community, like brought all their instruments and left them there. So I like basically had access to a music studio and my whole teenage high school years. And we mostly just played for fun. But then out of that kind of creative play space, I formed a band with some friends, and I was just a second guitarist playing kind of more their music. But we did an album and played it around the state, played a bunch of bars and stuff as teenagers. And then I formed a band of my own with them kind of helping me record it and produce those songs into proper songs, and then made that album, and then went and toured that around the state a bit. And then I moved and went to photography and film school in Minneapolis, which is kind of like the nearby city. There's like Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Chicago, all like 3-4 hours away. Minneapolis is the one that kind of drew my attention.
All of America, yeah.
Exactly.
Love that place. Out of the old, what ballpark did that used to be? Home plate still there in the mall. Like there's a bleacher seat up there still that they've still got up there. I don't remember what ballpark it was.
That's funny. I didn't know that history, but yeah.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No. But it's actually really interesting because it's one of the they have a lot of innovative things they do in Minneapolis. One of them being they have a large music history with Bob Dylan and Prince and a bunch of like really cool indie bands and a cool hip hop scene. And it's still going to this day. But they also like innovated with like electric train systems back in the time I lived there, like early 2000, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. They started. So Mall of America was one of those big new things that they did, but they also connected the trains from there to downtown, to the baseball stadium, to St. Paul, Minneapolis, and then all the way out to the suburbs. Like all these, like it became this like really cool way to get around and get rid of your car and like have a more modern, futuristic lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're kind of pushing. There's always pushing the boundaries there, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Minneapolis. Most people don't know that if you don't like hang out there for.
Yeah, well,
most people fly over Minneapolis.
Yeah, right. I've flown into Minneapolis to drive to Kansas and other states several times for work. So, but I love talking music with people who have a musical background because my dad, Ted Leonard Jr., created the Polka Kings, and they had three albums. Wow. I wrote and recorded music in the 70s and 80s, but I wasn't good enough for a record deal. But today, anybody can record anything and put it online for 99 cents. So it's like I was born too early, I guess.
It's interesting you talk about the Polka Kings because where I'm from, every wedding I'd ever been to until I was about 18 had a live polka band. And like people in the church I grew up in played in the live polka bands that toured around for weddings. And you dance all polka dance every single song for the entire wedding party. And it wasn't until like year 2000 that there was a DJ that played a wedding in my experience. Because of like Wisconsin, Minneapolis, or Chicago, that region is very Germanic Polish. And even Yankovic's, like Weird Al Yankovic, his dad is Frankie Yankovic, one of the polka kings. I actually call him that. It's interesting you have a connection to polka because it's a weird part of my childhood that I actually really like. It's like a lot of heritage from Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did that for a while too. I DJ'd events. My sister is 7 years younger. So when I was no longer writing and recording music, I had a huge record collection. I was like, we need somebody to do our high school dance. I can do that. I've got all the stuff. So I did that for a while too. But that then transitioned and led, you said, film school to more a visual art desire.
That's true, yeah. And my grandmother bought me a Kodak 110 back when I was like 12 years old. And my mom loved to shoot photography on film. So I did a ton of that. I was always the kid. There's a great picture of me in high school with like a bunch of my friends and me with like a Canon AE1 film camera around my neck hanging there. I was kind of always like this guy doing something with photography. We had a great darkroom and photography program and early Photoshop program and a documentary program where we made films, and we did live TV as well. Mostly goofy stuff like snowboard and skateboard videos and music videos and like a little bit of like scary stuff or like a weird, creepy dream sequence to Aphex Twin video or music. So like kind of, just a lot of playful stuff. But
that's I found kind of what got you interested more to that direction then. Yeah.
And what I found making music was that like I wasn't going to take it so seriously because I I realized, I could play songs, I could play and perform, but at the same time, my friends I was around were like much more talented and took it a lot more seriously. That was their thing. And I cared more about storytelling. But because of my appreciation for music, was like, well, I should do storytelling around music and musical artists. And what that moment in film school, when I was doing photography more, and in Minneapolis, I was hanging out with musicians in Minneapolis, and that fast forward till today, I'm still connected to those people. We don't spend a lot of time together, but I made my second movie and my most important movie up to this point about their lives in Minneapolis at that time, making music through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s when they had like an archive. So in terms of documentary filmmaking, knowing a story exists, it's not necessarily a documentary that you can make if they don't have an archive, because you need to tell the past. And how do you do that visually? And so they had like feature films, short films, music videos, them goofing around, making like absurd horror and comedy videos, and also an incredible body of musical work that I could use for the soundtrack. And then they also made an incredible amount of work, even more and more powerful, more important work after, in the transition that the film talks about changing their worldview, having a transformative experience in their life. And then they have more art that captured that moment in the past, even though, the movie shows it kind of like, this is our modern day, but obviously like it's a film. So it's years ago as well. But to have both periods of time captured in music and video made it this like beautiful, it was like a documentary waiting to happen. And that film is Witness Underground, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, we're there. We're there. Okay. Is that available online or?
Yeah. So I went through the process of learning the business of film after making the film, and because I sort of was approaching it, as an independent filmmaker, independent artist, and
was that
I spent the last 6 years on it.
Yeah, you did that before you officially created Banana Island Films, or after you set that up?
Yeah, we're jumping through a couple decades here, but
okay.
Yeah. I basically, the film is available on Amazon and Apple TV and YouTube Movies and Tubi TV. Those are the big ones, and it's also on like 14 other streaming services that are kind of smaller.
Yeah.
But if you go to witnessunderground.com, you can find all the ways to watch it wherever you live, and in North America has the most access. But it's all there, and it has like a global map of where you can watch it. So if you're watching this internationally, you can probably watch it somewhere, including the Banana Island Films, my YouTube channel. I've cut the film up into like 8 chapters, so you can watch it in small bits and see the whole movie that way.
You can watch it almost more like a TV series.
Yeah,
separate episodes in a way.
Yeah, short 10-minute episodes.
Yeah.
So it's available everywhere. And as far as Banana Island Films goes, so after I went through a similar thing as the artists in that film. And so just to keep it simple, it's about artists who escaped the Jehovah's Witnesses, or you could think of it as a cult, religious cult. They have some very strong elements to their faith that are very like abusive. And it's a really impactful story for the people in the film. But also I went through something similar because my parents joined that religion when I was like a young person. So I was like, they're trying to indoctrinate us, but they didn't know how to do that. So they failed at indoctrinating me. And I needed to make a film about how they treated me when I was being honest about what I believed with them and what I didn't believe. And they are coerced to treat you a certain way and then never talk to you again for the rest of your life. So I've been going through that for the last 16 years.
Yeah, Scientology too. I mean, once you're in, you're not supposed to be ever let out. And I mean,
exactly.
Leah Remini did that great show on A&E for a few years about that, in literal camps with the barbed wire to keep people in. That's not a faith. You don't have people there because they believe. They're there because they're being held hostage.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it. And I feel like I'm a religious refugee, not because I want to, but like that's what's happened. And the people that are in it are, what did you call them? Held hostage. They're held hostage, but with a mental prison, with self-policing, with brainwashing tactics, with manipulation, with coercion.
Yeah, since you like music, we both like music, and we both like movies. I'm not a movie critic per se, but I do sometimes write online reviews. like Creed, My Own Prison, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The band's Creed. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the movie Heretic?
I just started watching it recently. It's actually awesome. I was so impressed by how deep that they go into worldview, having a worldview, and like having that be challenged. I'm so impressed by that movie, and I'm so excited to finish it. But someone was like, "We need to watch that together." So I finally got around to watching it.
Yeah, some people indeed will. It's like, they're unfortunately, I dare say this. I mean, they're so weak in their faith that they can't watch something like that because, out of fear, something within them will then make them question themselves. I welcome questions. This whole show is about self-reflection. If you can't handle the questions, it's because deep down you know the answers might not be so convenient. And Heretic, I went in expecting nothing of that movie. I thought, oh, great, another Hollywood attack on religion film, but it was very well written, very well acted. It is worth seeing. And again, if you're indeed strong in your faith, you should not have a problem with the questions that arise within it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.
Yeah, and I feel like if you are challenged, then you do more research, like try to figure it out. Like ultimately, what I've learned from like neurobiology is that we have a model in our head about how reality works, and if we're faced with a challenge, then we have to do something to update the model, or we can live in a very unhealthy place of cognitive dissonance where we have two opposing ideas that cannot coexist, and our brain's not solving it for us, interpreting it in one way or the other. And it's good to go figure that out. You need to update your model whenever new information is presented. And it's okay if it's challenging. It's healthy to do that because we're always growing. There's always an infinite onion layer being pulled back about, getting to the core of an idea or how reality works.
Yeah.
And no one knows. Actually, no one has an actual answer. If you're confident, it's actually a problem, I think.
And I think even Scientology, which I'm not a fan of, has some validity to it if it were indeed truly all about free will. But it was created by Ron L. Hubbard as a scam to sell books. And Leah Remini exposed that's basically what it's continued to be. They'll rewrite a book, a line in a book, and you're forced to buy it to replace the existing book. It's like a money laundering scam type cult. There's very little religion or faith in it, but calling it a religion gets them federal breaks.
Oh, deeply. And I feel like that's actually the thing when it comes to the human rights topic, which my film doesn't dive into, but it's definitely the thing that's changing human rights laws around the world, is shunning that tax breaks and the flow of money into these organizations that have unhealthy goals for society or their members, or that, like in this case, like you have to buy these books, you have to pay it, you have to put all your time into this thing or your money into this program. They shouldn't be getting tax incentives if they have been found guilty of crimes that already exist in our nations or states. And in the case of both of these religions, we shouldn't say like, oh, it's a religious issue, like let them do whatever they want. Like there's slaves there. We can't exist with slavery in our country. There's people dying because of this. Death isn't an acceptable result of a religious group.
But it seems like for some people, the slavery issue is always only about the American Civil War and Lincoln being killed so people didn't get the reparations, the 40 acres and the mule they were supposed to get. So now they want to steal money from those who never held slaves to give to people who never were slaves. It again comes down to the money scam, it seems. And
I would like if we actually dealt with actual slavery that's existing right now.
It's going on all over the place still.
It's a huge issue right now.
You won't get a peep out of them about that. No, it's about
because they're making money on it.
In. Yeah. Cash. And I say that about it. Does, I was born and raised Catholic, but this is not a Catholic show. Or no, you gotta keep a sense of humor. That's great. But as my friend Pastor Rick says, I'm definitely not your average Catholic. In fact, I call Francis the nincompoop, because he's more interested in worldly communism than Christ and Catholicism. But I don't care if it's a Catholic, Presbyterian, Lutheran, a Presbyterian, whatever your flavor of church. A lot of them have become humanist clubs and all about say whatever, whether it's biblical or not, to keep fannies in the pews and the money coming in. So to have your relationship with Christ doesn't require that building with the steeple on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just with any cult, if there's a money angle, then it's already poorly incentivized to be correct. So the fact that like these churches operate the same way, like, oh, as long as the money's flowing in the pews, the pews are full and the money's flowing, then we know it's working well. We'll say whatever it takes to keep that happening. That's actually not necessarily optimized to give you truth, because it's about money.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do both.
Yeah. And there could be cultish offsprings of any sect and any religion. Like there are certain in Islamic faith, certain Shia, some would say cults, that believe they are to hasten Armageddon. Well, that was also Om Sri-Yoko, who I discuss in my Terror Strikes book, a Christian offspring cult that believed, hey, we can engage in terrorism because hastening the day of Christ's return is a good thing. And nowhere in the Bible does it say, so evil, be complicit in evil for that supposed end good.
Yeah, I grew up in a doomsday cult, and the film's about that. So I'm kind of immune now to, we need Jesus to come back and murder everyone as a solution to our world's problems. If someone's saying that, I think that you should just walk away. Maybe run.
Yes. You shall be known by your fruits, and you must sow to reap. Or yeah, I said it right that time. A lot of times I get it backwards, but if you aren't sowing good, you're complicit in the evil, I always say.
Yeah. If anything, how does this go? I feel that Christianity in general, well, religion in general, let's not say Christianity, religion in general has a long history of getting really good people to do things that would be objectively harmful to others. And ultimately in my life, I feel like as long as there are no victims, you can do and believe whatever you want. But as soon as you have victims, if people are getting hurt in some way, taken advantage of, or physically hurt, mentally hurt, emotionally, like, we have victims, and it's not acceptable. And religion's a really good model of getting great people to do bad things.
Yes, good can come from it, bad can come from it. Our entire nation, hence the name constitutionalist politics. Constitution, as Adam said, made for a moral people, and our Judeo-Christian foundations of based on biblical free will. but my free will and my rights end at your nose. I can't punch you in the face just because I feel like it.
It's a good line to draw. Yeah.
I may want to, but
like, I want to punch you, but I'm going to have to get a lawyer.
Yeah.
We have to talk about it.
Yeah, well, that's a whole legal ease and lawfare out of control has brought us a lot of down the path away from where we were so long ago, and why we have so many, like, everything's got to have a warning label on it to protect the stupid from themselves. And that's
some things are out of hand. That's true.
At any rate, indeed, what drew me to you was in your bio on, full disclosure, Matchmaker FM. That's a site where podcasters and guests can manage to come across each other. It talked about escaping cults. So I felt that indeed an important discussion to have on this show. However, someone wants to define cult, but I think you and I agree in where we draw that line. If people are literally being held behind barbed wire fences and gates, it's a cult. You're not there of your free will.
Yeah. There's a great, the bite model. Well, first of all, most of the cult experts that are around today that are still active, Stephen Hassan being one, Jan Jelalich another one. A lot of their work is based off of how the communists under Mao, the Lifton's 8, it's called. So if you want to look into Lifton's 8, that's kind of like a great source material for how to control the minds of people and a nation. And then like Stephen Hassan kind of simplified things onto BITE model, BITE, so behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion control. So those four, if you have a group that's doing that, it doesn't need to be a religion. It could be political. It could be the bake sale. It could be your company where you work at. If people are controlling, another one is bounded choice, which is Jan Jelalich's kind of thesis, is about you have four elements, and one of them is a charismatic leader. It could be a group of leaders that have the connection to God, a transcendent belief system that you are part of something special, or you will attain something special if you continue on this path. And then usually I can't remember the other elements, but ultimately they are not. You feel like you're making choices, but it's what the group has told you are your options, or is your only option.
Nose to that choice. Yeah. The illusion of a choice. You can drink the poison Kool-Aid, or you could take the poison pill. The illusion of a choice, it's bad, negative to your health, either way you choose.
Right. In the case of my family and the Witness Underground topic of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the bounded choice that the active members, who are the real victims here, have to make is they're presented with you. If you want to live forever on earth, which is what their version of heaven is, live forever on earth as a human, you can't talk to your child or anyone who's left the religion or doesn't believe or has said something questioning the faith. If anyone says something questioning the faith, you should fear them, because if you talk to them, you're opening the door to something that could challenge your faith. And if, obviously, like you said at the onset, if your faith is so weak, like that's a signal, a red flag, right?
Right.
They can't talk to me because they will be killed by Jesus or God, however you want to look at that, because they opened the door to communication with someone.
But yet a whole lot of devout Jehovah's Witnesses have died. They're in cemeteries. They're not living forever on the earth, right?
Actually, yeah. The last time I talked to my grandparents, last two times, the one that just passed last week, I was like, so when you first joined the religion, you were really happy to say that, because they read the book from 1925 that said millions now living will never die. And it was like, in the book, first page is like proof conclusive that millions now living will never die. And we bring that book up in the film, but that hooked my grandparents in the 80s, early 90s. And I was like, so how do you feel about that now, 2024? And that's a few months ago. And they're like, well, I'm pretty certain I'm going to die. And it was like, okay, so you're updating your model. Like they hooked you, 50 years ago with this idea, and now you realize that it's not true. and everyone who's ever read that book is also dead. So you have to understand, like, if they're the direct connection to God, and that's what they wrote, actual proof that they won't die. Join us. You won't die. Like, everyone else who's ever come before has died, and every one of your peers is now dead. So, okay, well, what do you believe now? Do you believe that they are the source of truth with proof conclusive about anything at all? I feel like at some point you kind of have to, like, question reality again, or update the model.
But as long as there are new, as Barnum said, a sucker born every minute, as long as there are replacements for those who leave through death that they were promised would never come, or leave for whatever other reasons, as long as there are new recruits, the cult and the money keeps
flowing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're one of the richest companies in New York City. They make like $50 billion a year off of their whole global network of about 8 million or so that they claim as members. And most of them are buying books. It's exactly the same model as Scientology. And it was exactly the same as the founder. He sold a clothing company, started a book publishing company, and that became a religion. Surprise, surprise, you had to buy his book. And he kept on coming out with new books.
Sounds just like Ron L. Hubbard in Scientology. Yes.
Actually, I met a guy when I first started I did a crowdfund for the movie back in 2018. And one guy who had left the religion, he went to MIT and then kind of questioned his faith. And then he ended up being a pretty big voice in the 80s and 90s against the religion. Alan Feuerbacher, who has sadly passed recently, but he invited me into his house, and I was living really close to him, and he has this basement. He said he spent over $125,000 to collect every single piece of literature that religion has ever produced, throughout over 100 since 1879 or something. He literally had the entire archive of everything. And he was like, it was the coolest thing in the world. He had this like bookshelf amongst the entire super library in his basement that filled the whole basement. This one bookshelf, he's like, I figured out where the source material came from for all of their ideas. And he had this book he's like, this is what was written in 1930, and then this person in the religious leader or this writing group copied and plagiarized all of this information and made it their own. But it was like super fringe, super right, super like really crazy conspiracy theory thing. And it's like that had been slammed publicly, but then like this religion's like, oh, that's our idea. We want that idea. Like, really? You want that crazy idea?
Oh, and throughout all history, all the religions, the Catholic Church, the Easter Bunny for Easter, co-opted from the fertility gods, right? Yeah, and to make it part of that, to try to, in a way, be inclusive and draw others in. And
draw in the pagan.
Christ was not born on December 25th. But you'll have people freak out if you dare deal in that reality, but it's not what matters on Christmas Day. What matters is the tradition and the why, the symbolism of why we are celebrating it, not the fact that it's technically not the correct day.
Yeah. Actually, you ever watch Zeitgeist back in the 90s? There's like a 3 documentary part series.
Familiar with it, but no, didn't watch.
So in Heretic, to bring it back to your plug of that great movie, he brings the young women into this room, which has all these paintings of art with Krishna, with Egyptian Horus, and he's like, all of these different deities and faith groups have
all the similarities.
He was killed by the state and dead for 3 days, ascended to heaven. He was also born a virgin, and just like all these kind of mythical elements to it that are similar to the Jesus story. And I haven't read the Jefferson Bible, but as I understand it, it's like all the non-supernatural elements of the Bible. Is like the president of the United States like made a Bible that didn't have all the supernatural stuff in it. It's like, well, what did Jesus actually say of value that didn't relate to these 17 other religions that are just copied from them? Which I found interesting. And this kind of stuff is all taught in theology school. Like I've talked to lots of different ministers and priests who this is like 101 Christianity. Like, hey, this is what was borrowed from the Babylonians. This is what was borrowed from the Canaanites. This is what was borrowed from the Egyptians. This is what is similar to, the Krishnas. And like people might bring this up, but like ultimately their role isn't to teach like deep history and philosophy that's deeper than like the surface level stuff. Their job is to like make sure that people have their emotions cared for when someone's born or dies in their family, and comforts them in the time of need, and makes them feel like they belong and they're part of a community, so that their mental health is like has like a net to land in if they're going through a hard time. Like that is still the value of religion, in my opinion. And it bothers me that no one's figured out how to do that outside of the religion model. So it still exists because it actually provides really important value to society in those times of great need that we still like, no one really knows what happens in the transition from death. There's no proof.
Yeah. Since we had technical difficulties today at the beginning, I don't remember exactly when we started to know where to really end it. So I do want to start wrapping it up.
Okay,
but
sure.
Before we get to the full end wrap up, is there anything else we've not discussed that you'd like to put out there before we indeed conclude?
Well, yeah, to go back to Witness Underground, it was a life's work. I've got 10 years of interviewing people about their leaving a religious group, specifically the Jehovah's Witnesses in most cases, but that turned into this movie that became my greatest life's work at this point. And I spent 6 years trying to get this social impact film out into the world that isn't so much about being anti-religious. It's really about helping people understand what the Jehovah's Witnesses really are, how they work, in a very gentle and like neutral way, that if you're an active member of that religion and you have family in it, it's not challenging to the religion, but it does show you some of the insidious elements of a cult. And I feel like it's something that the world doesn't understand. Most people just say like, oh, they don't celebrate Christmas or birthdays and they're not really Christians. And that's like kind of where it ends. And we start there. You're right. Those things are true, but there's so much more to it. And ultimately there's human rights things that are going on. There's really abusive elements to this group, but not just this group. It's not just the Jehovah's Witnesses that are a problem. The film was invited to Decult, the Cult Awareness Conference, the first of its kind in the world. And at that conference, and that's why I'm in New Zealand now, because, well, first of all, it's awesome to stay here. I like it a lot. But that conference brought me here and it brought the film here, and it sold out as an international premiere. The film did 9 film festivals before that. So it's like a great end cap, like the right kind of organization to recognize the film for its importance in the world. And I would love for you to go watch it, because it's not just a thing that I made or think about my cool friends. It's actually about processing trauma using art and the value that has to keep people from dying by suicide, or to actually to open up the door to talk about trauma, because we all experience it. Humans have a chemical and emotional maximum that you can hit, whether it was like moving to a new apartment, or like someone dying, or having a worldview shift like the film discusses, where you realize that what you've been taught isn't quite right, or it's wildly different than reality. Or like the people behind it are poorly incentivized to actually be like honest with you, or abuse and control you. So like we can all be susceptible to that. It's not just like, oh, some weirdos are born into a weird group, like sucks to be them. It's like, no, we humanize them. You get to like connect with them through music and their story. And you also might be in something, or it'd be worth questioning reality again, even if you didn't ever do that, or you haven't done that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like what is real?
Yeah. And then this show, I like I say, it's not a Catholic show or a Baptist show or Adventist show or Jehovah the Witness show or a whatever. I always say Satan wins if we are at each other. If we can focus, I don't want this show to necessarily challenge someone who may be happy as a Jehovah Witness. So they've probably not made it to this point in this episode if they are. But if you are and you're there, again, if we can remember to focus and stay Christ-centric, and be together as brothers and sisters on that, then moving towards something positive, that's good. It's Satan wins when we're at each other's throats. And that's even true of the other religions, right? My Terror Strikes book is not Islamophobic. It's not, all Muslims are terrorists or terrorist sympathizer. Yeah, it's not that. Like I said, the Om Sri-Yoko Christian cult is in there too. There's good and bad in all these things. And if we could focus on the things we could come together on, it would be a better world.
I'm totally with you. Like dividing communities, making you feel separate or other from a different group is actually super insidious in society. So I appreciate that that's your goal and how you see the world.
Yeah. And so website where people can reach out to you?
Yeah, witnessunderground.com. I also, my film production company is Banana Island Films. So you can Google that. There's a bananaislandfilms.com. And I have another film out there if you want to check out music scene in Vietnam, uniting people from many, many different cultures together through music. That one's called Hanoi Mixtape at hanoimixtape.com.
Interesting. I like that concept. But of course, what immediately comes to mind is good morning, Vietnam, right?
Yeah, and I grew up with Vietnam War refugees and veterans who worked with the CIA in Wisconsin, a lot of the Hmong people from the Himalayas, the low Himalayas. And so I had this deep interest to go there and see what it's all about. Because in my band, when I was an active Jehovah's Witness, my primary band member was a child of Hmong refugees. And I was always curious about their culture. I ate their food and got to know them a bit. And so I was drawn to go check it out. I ended up living there for 5 years and got really embedded in the music and art scene there and made a film about it with my Vietnamese friends. Cool. And so I feel like I had to go figure out, why is everything I have to sign before I do my taxes or I get a new job is about, there's something in there about the Vietnam War. It had a really big impact on American culture and a big topic for resistance to the authoritarianism of the state with the draft and whatnot. And do we actually want to fight communism? Is that actually why is the capitalist system so against this? Is it really such a problem? Or maybe there's something valuable there. Maybe we should have a balance like Europe does, where they have state socialism and provide healthcare and show dignity to our society. We
already do. We have Social Security. It's a socialist construct, right?
Exactly.
But we pay into it, therefore we are entitled to it. But giving it away to everyone who hasn't earned it, the communist model, then Cloward and Piven bankrupts it. But that's a whole other
big topic.
Yeah. So thank you, Scott.
But I wanted to see that first person, it's still a communist military controlled state. So it was really interesting to live underneath a communist regime. And actually, side point, growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses felt a lot like a communist state. It's a very Orwellian. So for me, it was this is actually normal for me. Oh, there's police walking around watching everything I do. Yeah. And they're wearing normal clothes. They're secret. I grew up in that scenario. Jehovah's Witnesses are actually super commie. Total topic for the next time we hang out.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Scott Holman, for stopping by. Take care. God bless.
Take care. See you.
Thank you for having tuned in for Constitutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help.
Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Thayrone X. On the Edge, Thayrone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bondarenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to Wham podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Thayrone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.